start off right off the bat with an interesting theory about Anna right in chapter 1. And I don't want to have to give away too much for people who haven't read it, but it kind of speaks to the idea that we have of her as this kind of innocent person. Can you talk to me about your research with that and kind of what led to that?
Well, it was something Henry VIII said that gave me my storyline, because he kept insisting that Anna wasn't a virgin on their wedding night. And he didn't just say it once, he kept saying it to anyone who would listen. He said he felt her breasts and her belly, and that by those and other tokens and the looseness of them, she should be no virgin. And I wondered what Henry meant, because everybody thinks, oh, Henry was just trying to wriggle out of the marriage. But that's not grounds. Finding your bride isn't a virgin isn't grounds for going out of a marriage. You can't get an annulment on that basis. So I did wonder whether Henry was telling the truth. He'd been married 3 times. He'd fathered about 15 children. I think he would have known the difference between a female body that had borne children and one that hadn't. And that just set me wondering. Of course, that might be doing a huge injustice to Anna, because because there are other things that could have caused this slackness or perhaps rapid weight loss. A lot of brides lose weight in the run-up to their weddings, and if you're going to leave your country and your family for good, and you're marrying a man like Henry VIII, the stress levels must be absolutely astronomical. And so she could have lost that weight, through stress. We don't know for certain. But there is, I pondered for a long while whether to go with this theory, and because this is fiction, I'd be a lot more cautious writing it as history. Right. But even so, there are sources that could be corroborative, sources as to her character. I don't think she was quite the innocent that traditionally she's been thought to be.
Right, and you kind of touched on that in a couple of places later on, even after she was single. The kind of rumors that she was indulging a bit too much in alcoholic beverages and entertaining,
and that she became free with her favours when she did.
Right, and
that comes from her former secretary. And the Imperial Ambassador Chapuis reports this conversation he had with the secretary, and this is about a year and a half after Anna's divorce. But even so, the secretary, it was clear that both of them were aware that this was well known, this information.
Interesting. And then you also kind of hinted that in the very famous conversation that she has with the ladies about he comes in and kisses me goodnight, and then all of that.
That's a very strange conversation, Heather, because a month later, her chamberlain, who obviously had day-to-day dealings with her, couldn't understand what she was saying. And yet in this account, the ladies in the lady's statement, this is all in connection with the annulment, her English is fluent.
Right.
And she could have been speaking through an interpreter. They were briefed to get her to admit that her marriage hadn't been consummated, because that was going to be one of the grounds for the annulment. So it's a very strange conversation.
I also thought it was interesting. You really show the role of, and I'll just say Cleves because that's what people know it as, but the role of Cleves in the foreign policy kind of world, and that's something that often gets lost when you talk about Anna in the context of England.
And you need to see her as she saw herself in this European context.
So what can you tell me about her life as a princess in Cleves, and how she would have seen herself in this context?
Well, the Duchy of Cleves, as it was in German, it was a fief. It was held of the Holy Roman Emperor, but it was pretty independent at the time of Anna's youth. And it had its own army, and it had a great culture. A lot of Italian culture came up the Rhine, and there was France not that far away to the west. So it was a court based on the new learning of Erasmus. It was an enlightened court because its dukes were Anna's father and her brother. They were technically Catholics, but they were very tolerant, even of Protestants, at a time when Lutheranism is seen as heresy. So she grew up at this court. Her mother was a strict Catholic, and she brought her daughters up as strict Catholics. So Anna was always a Catholic. But she was brought up, we're told, never far from her mother's elbow. And things like dancing and singing and making music were frowned upon for young girls. So it was a very constricted, perhaps suffocating existence for her.
Right. And yet she did, you mentioned Erasmus, and can you tell me a little bit about kind of, it seems almost like a dichotomy, that it was this very cultural court, and yet at the same time she wasn't able to take part in any of that.
No, because the women were kept quite apart.
Okay.
So they were more or less isolated. I mean, they were the princesses. There were three of them, but one married early. Mm-hmm. They were encouraged to entertain guests at table, but usually these guests were chosen for them by their parents.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and you show an awkward moment where she wants to entertain people, and they all kind of in England, or it was in the scene in Calais, was it? Where she?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, she wanted to do this. She wanted to recreate one of these dinner parties. Of course, English ladies didn't do that, although they had a lot of freedoms in other respects. You know, right. They had all the sort of accomplishments that Henry VIII admired in women. They could dance, they could sing, they could make music, write poetry. Henry loved all that.
Right.
But Anna didn't have it.
Right. Can you talk to me about her religion, which you touched on, that she was raised a Catholic and that she's often seen, because she was German, as this Protestant bride, but she wasn't really at all, was she?
Well, it's easy to see why this is people have got this impression, because she was brought up as a strict Catholic, and I don't think Henry would have married her if she'd been a Protestant. And she observed the Catholic faith. When she came to England, her father had broken with the Pope. Unlike Henry, he'd stayed friendly with the Pope even after the break. So Henry was sort of felt an affinity with Cleves. But we don't know anything about how Anna coped with England turning Protestant under Henry's son, Edward VI. But obviously, when Mary Tudor came to the throne and there was a counter-reformation, then obviously Anna would have been, sort of reverted to, if she'd paid lip service to the Protestant faith in Edward's reign, as a lot of people did, she would have reverted.
Right. Okay. And I also want to talk about obviously her relationship with Henry and how they became quite good friends afterwards. And yeah, it's interesting because sometimes you see them in the TV shows, like in the Tudors. There's the idea that maybe they were together, and there are those rumors that they actually had a child, and yet. Oh yes. Well, yeah, and so what can you tell me about their relationship afterwards? They didn't have any children, so
I very much doubt that Henry was the father of any children Anna might have had, because he was too besotted with Catherine Howard at the time. It's inconceivable he would have slept with Anna at the time when he's very much in love with Catherine Howard. Yeah. But the rumours persisted beyond Catherine Howard's execution, and right up towards the end of Henry's reign, there was talk that he would take Anna back. And but some strange transformation had taken place with the divorce, because suddenly they discovered they really liked each other and they became friends. And this is evident in Henry. Henry made a very generous divorce settlement on Anna. But the friendship becomes evident because this is a time of rampant inflation. Prices are doubling in that decade. Anna's divorce settlement was worth less and less as the years wore on. And Henry supplemented it. He paid for her officers. He paid out expenses when she was ill. And in one margin of his accounts, he's got payment expenses in his own hand. He wrote in payment expenses for my beloved sister Anna.
Oh wow!
So this was a relationship. They became friends, and he looked after her. But it was after his death that things went very wrong for her.